Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Cropper here. I'd like to talk about voting because, appropriately enough, some important elections may be coming up soon, the second Tuesday of the coming November. So, in order to get you vamped up, in order to rock the vote, if I may, I just want to let you know voting is not important and shouldn't be important. Insofar as we have the right to vote as the first condition, and a second condition, and these are inseparable. The second condition is a constitution, a written constitution to protect our rights. If we have the right to vote, and we have a written constitution to protect our rights, we're fine. The vote shouldn't be very important. It has to be there in case there's things like war, or extreme distress, or Judgment Day comes, we have to elect the right guy to talk to God. Then we need the right to vote. But that right has to be reserved and is not really important. It is not important that you voice your opinion in every election, particularly if you don't have an opinion. If it doesn't matter, if you don't care which candidate gets in, then you shouldn't be forced to voice your opinion one way or the other. That's like manufacturing a consensus. Like saying everybody voted and therefore 67% of people do support this guy. Half of the people don't really care one way or the other. So it looks like a lot of people care when they really don't and shouldn't have to. Because in a free society where you've got a constitution protecting your rights, the next year of your life or the next 10 years or what career you're in or whichever shouldn't be hanging off the edge of a precipice depending on who's elected. It shouldn't be. You should have the freedom to go about your way of life and what you're doing with total disregard for who the president is. Not entirely, but to some extent. In states of national emergency or whatever, that's different. But throughout the 1800s, the American president wasn't too important. Lincoln was important. A few presidents were important in a few ways. But the important men in the 1800s were the industrialists, the capitalists who built things, who invested. They had more power. There were 5 or 10 men in America with more power than the president. Now America has a president who is the most powerful man on the planet, bar none. But back then it was different. For the whole of the 1800s, industrialists held sway. And that's the way it should be. The government should be a minor player. It should have nothing but guns to protect you from crooks, guns to protect you from international dictators, and courts so that you and your neighbor can go and settle things peacefully when there's a disagreement. That's all the government should do. So, why should you have to vote every single time Joe Schmo and Joe Schmiel are getting in to say they want to raise or lower the tax on candy bars? Well, there shouldn't even be taxes. But how would their policies possibly affect you in any real way on a day-to-day basis unless there's really a big issue? So voting has to be available, but that doesn't mean it has to be used mandatorily all the time. It's not a duty to vote. It is a luxury and a right. You have the right to vote and the luxury to not do it because you're free, and if it doesn't matter, it doesn't matter. And you shouldn't have to voice your opinion if it's just 2 variations of a Democrat who's going to go in there and do nothing. So I think this is particularly applicable to the Australians. I think they have mandatory voting. And whoever else, you poor suckers that have to vote. I think that in the long run, education is where my efforts need to go. And I don't need to pay attention, really, seriously, to politics. Not right now. If Ron Paul gets nominated Republican, I'll go register and vote. But if he doesn't get the nomination, I'll wait until something else. And I really don't care for Ron Paul one way or the other because I don't think he's speaking to the culture. I think he's early. What I think needs to be done first is the culture has to be made aware that they're not aware of anything. So I'll support Ron Paul, but sort of with a shrug because it's like he's a little early to the game. Nevertheless, if he's there this year and next year and on the next presidential election there's another libertarian like him, these ideas keep getting hammered into people's heads. That's how progress gets made. So he's part of the picture of progress. The point of all this doesn't go on Ron Paul, though. The point of all this is that we shouldn't have to vote all the time. It should be available, like if Ron Paul gets nominated, then go vote. But if it's just, Bob Dole versus Clinton, it doesn't matter.